But let's move on. We've been talking about candidates, and some younger first-timers are hoping to make a mark in this election. Among them are 4 past pupils of Lagan College just outside Belfast. 3 are competing directly for seats on Lisburn and Castlereagh Council, with 1 running in Newry, Mourne and Down. And earlier this week, they went back to school with our political correspondent, Jayne McCormack, in tow.
The world's press have come to film 11-year-old children at a school picnic. But here in Northern Ireland, it's big news because Protestant and Catholic children are prepared not only to play together, but to go to school together.
These were the first pupils at Lagan College when the integrated school was set up 42 years ago. Since then, thousands more have passed through its doors, though few have chased a career in politics. Enter Will, Nancy, Jacinta, and Daniel. All recent past pupils, now political rivals in this election. And where better to bring them together than back in the classroom.
I think politics, particularly here in Lagan, shaped what I wanted to do in the future. Made me more informed about politics and allowed me, therefore, to look into different political parties here, different big issues here, relate those big issues to the local issues where I am, down in Slieve, Croob and in Drummond near, and then try and make that something that I'd like to change.
For me to get into politics, it was sort of around 16, 17 years of age, kind of becoming more a sort of political, not taking any sort of sides with any political party. And sort of as I got a bit older, 17, 18, the Brexit referendum, I think it kind of opened up my eyes a lot more to actually what's going on locally and also internationally, as well as sort of across the water in Britain, on the island of Ireland and inside the EU as well.
So Brexit was the catalyst?
Brexit was the catalyst for me, and it made my decision where I was able to find which party suited me best, and that was Sinn Fein.
Jacinta, you're in the Green Party. Yeah. I think I can take a guess as to perhaps how you got involved in local politics.
I've been really largely involved in environmental activism. I actually studied in the Netherlands, where I did do an interdisciplinary course where we covered a lot about environmental and governance. So I did cover a lot of topics there, and that sparked my interest for it. But I've always come at this from the campaigning and activist perspective in how we can actually install change in our wider society. And then whenever I came home, I realised that the place that I can affect the most change is locally in Northern Ireland. And I thought, I'm very frustrated at the political system here. I may as well try to actually be part of that change. And so that was my route to get into politics.
You're all first-timers running for election, but you're running for election at a time when most of our politics is not working. And so I just wonder if any of you feel the same way as Jacinta, that it was hoping to try and change a system that doesn't seem to always work as well as it should.
Political instability is not something new as well. Like, whenever I studied politics at Lagan, Stormont wasn't functioning then too. So I definitely think that people sometimes think that it can make people more pessimistic about politics, but I actually find that it definitely inspired me to try and get involved in a cross-community party and, to try and make a difference.
I'd like to jump in on this because it really does frustrate me. There are so many issues that we're facing, both locally and globally, and the focus on the constitutional question that has been dominating politics historically and creating a stalemate, basically, in Stormont is deeply frustrating, but we're also seeing the effects of that on a local level. I think it's one of the things that's motivated me to run at council, because council has been the ones, local governance, that has stayed true regardless of whether or not Stormont is functioning. And this is actually something that's very empowering. If we could actually devolve more decision-making powers to council, so it's in keeping with the rest of the UK and in Ireland, we'd be able to see a lot more transformative progress across the board.
Personally, I think, while there are issues in the north that do need addressed, I think not enough people in Northern Ireland look at the constitutional question as a way of transforming that.
There is conversations happening across the north, across the whole island, about the constitutional change. It's happening at school tables, dinner tables, out in the street, in bars, restaurants.
It's happening in this classroom now.
It's happening in this classroom probably 5 days a week. These things have already been happening. It's how we can bring everybody who agree or who disagree on that journey to 32-county country.
100%. Yeah, I just think there's large sections of society who are either refusing to engage in the conversation or aren't being extended an arm to join the conversation. And I think that's where the unique position of the SDLP lies. to reach out to them.
We're not going to square the circle on that particular issue today, and not even within the council elections, although there's a wider point about whether or not this election that you're all standing in is in some ways a referendum on the Windsor framework and the DUP's stance on it and not going back into Stormont. But to bring it back to that local level, have you had any sort of feedback on any of the doors saying you're too young to be a candidate? What are you talking about? What are you doing? I mean, does that ever happen?
So I find it very encouraging more than anything. But in terms of actually like going out and putting ourselves forward, being up in the posters and on the lampposts and stuff, of course there's been a real level of like anxiety and nerve-wracking around that. It is a big step to put yourself out in the public eye, and I really I think congratulate everybody here for taking that step, because it is important that we see younger representation and also more women represented in politics.
I definitely think, you know, as young people, we bring a fresh perspective, to politics, I hope, and especially as like past pupils of an integrated school, I think as well. That's a big part of it as well. Just the way that we've all learned together and shared and learned from one another. I think that'll be a great thing that we could bring.
I'm only 2 years out of Lagan, and you do get some people who are concerned with it, but I think more importantly, what I've noticed on the doors is a lot of people really excited about it. I think it brings a real freshness to our politics. I think it gives a good new fresh perspective on old and stale issues. This election
and some of your colleagues might say they're not old and stale.
Of course not. No, not the colleagues, just the issues, and it just provides a fresh perspective on that.
Is it about handing it over to the next generation, to you guys as well? Do you think sometimes there's a tendency to rely on the safe pair of hands, but actually to let a new generation have a go at it might be the right approach?
I believe so. We have to make a good positive impact and be progressive and work with everybody from across the political spectrum that you mightn't necessarily agree with in the same policies, but we can work together and build that better future for everyone.
If we could pull that back to the local council level that is stable and will continue to function, this is where we'll actually be able to make change, and this is where the local people will be able to see change and also believe more in politics, because it's not always going to be a failure.
Jayne McCormack reporting. Time for a final thought with the panel. I just wanted to say, first of all, to you, Lee, 4 young people running for 4 different parties, the SDLP Alliance, the Greens and Sinn Fein, none standing for political unionism. What does that tell you, do you think?
That tells me that these 4 people are politically interested and have went so far as getting that. There are people in integrated education in all political parties. Not all of them choose to go forward. I'm sure it will change.
But it's interesting, 4 young people and they're not standing for political
Well, when you actually look at the area of Belfast that they come, it's actually the most politically diverse, so it's not that surprising.
So you're not worried? Unnecessarily?
I'm not. This is the thing of it's a case of anything that I've ever seen or read in terms of where unionism is, it's all solvable. So I've never been a person believing in running around in panic. There's plenty potential. Referendum unionism is in a good place. Political unionism isn't. The challenge for political unionism is remarrying those two again. And part of that will be part of politics, and part of that will be non-party political campaigning.
Okay. I think you've said that before. It's just interesting to see that maybe political unionism isn't any further along that journey. But there's lots of time to talk about this over the next couple of days. I want to put John Tong's predictions to you and just get your thoughts on that.